moves, right? So we have lots of little movements and earthquakes that we measure, and larger earthquakes and smaller earthquakes, it builds up pressure and then it moves. So what we have is not very slow processes over a long period of time, bending the rock over 100 million years, or of course we can't possibly disprove or prove that. That's not, remember those three categories? Absolute, factual, and then nonsensical, because nonsensical you can't even by definition prove or disprove it. Well, that's kind of what that rock has bent over hundreds of millions of years over a gradual process is. You can't disprove it or prove it because you can't do an experiment. So, but we do know, because we see places where there is sediment formed, we do know that it can bend when it's wet. We saw that at Mount St. Helens when the volcano erupted and the mudslides, massive mudslides, forms sediment layers and stratigraphic layers in a matter of days, and then some of them could be bent. We see that, we know that can happen. So this is really evidence. And by the way, if I'm an engineer, I was an engineer, so if you take an object and you bend it, if it's a very thin object, you can bend it fairly easily. The thicker it gets, the less easy it is to bend it. And if you do bend it, the thicker it is, as you bend it, you have a very much higher and higher strain on the outside layer the thicker you get.
Breaks.
And it's going to break, it's going to crack. Matt knows that. Windows and,
Yeah.
and materials, right? It's
Yeah.
going to break. If you have it, the thicker you have it, and the more you bend it, the more likely it's going to break. And it's going to break at the outside bend surface, because that's where the high stress is. Well, you don't have any fractures here.
Easiest way to bend it is to make it wet.
Make it wet so it's flexible. Well, there you go, right? So with rock, this is certainly the case. So if it's dry, solid rock, you're not going to see that. So this is evidence also of very thick sediment in the canyon. Solid rock, brittle material. So from 2 Peter 3:4, Peter says, "From before the times of our ancestors, everything has remained the same since the world was first created." This is what people are saying, mockers are saying. "They deliberately forget that God made the heavens long ago by the word of his command. Then he used the water to destroy the ancient world with a mighty flood." So Peter says that this happened. And he says that that's what people will say, is that everything remains the same. There's no catastrophe, it's just a slow, long, gradual process. That's not true. And by the way, nowadays there are many geologists admitting in catastrophic processes. But they don't like to say, well, this is a massive flood that the Bible describes. They will say a meteorite hit the ocean and it massively flooded, mass extinctions or something of that nature, because they know the catastrophes happen by looking at the record. Why does it have to be catastrophes? Why couldn't it happen at once? So the world was different in the first day. Remember, the information's being put in by God, as the Bible says. Energy created, and then matter's created from the energy. And then all the animals and all the structures are created, all the organization in the universe is created, and the stars are created, everything's created, organized, information put in, and then the fall with Adam and Eve, and now the universe is decaying, as we talked about with the second law of thermodynamics. And the flood world before, as Peter is saying, was different than after the flood. And finally, when Jesus returns, it's going to be completely renovated, going to be completely changed. It's going to be different. There isn't going to be a big bang then.
That's verse 7.
Right? Verse 7. Verse 7, it says it's going to be burned.
It's going to be burned.
In huge heat. So there is going to be a big bang, but it didn't create things at the beginning. It's going to destroy things at the end to be redone by God. So, I don't know, you guys got any questions about any of this stuff?
So why are there no fossils at all in the layer underneath it?
Because that layer is before the flood.
But there were animals before
Yeah, but
the
there was
flood.
nothing that had, there was nothing,
That's
that
the-
was like beginning of time.
That's,
kinda like-
that's the original creation week.
Right.
See, God is separating the waters from the land. There's water all over in the original few days of creation. He's doing things. So we don't understand totally what that means, but there was some sort of massive water process, and then I don't know why. Who knows? Maybe
would
there
make
had to be.
sense.
Maybe we wanted to have good soils and things for the plants to grow in. I don't know.
Think of it this way.
But basically,
the
yes.
third day he created land, or the fourth day. He
Mhm.
created land. There was no creatures alive yet. The land came first. Then he created the creatures. So that might have been the land. And then why you have such a huge explosion of fossils right above that sedimentary, or the land part where that, what do you call it, the Great Conformity is?
Mhm.
Is because there was only 2 of every kind taken. Everything else was wiped out. So that could be an explanation of why right above that Great
Right,
Conformity you have an explosion of fossils.
everything on the earth was